going on, Boulder? Coach Prime does it once again. Another successful event. They hosted the We Hard to Find Showcase. Basically the pro day for the Colorado Buffaloes there in Boulder. Tons of personnel from the NFL were there, from the top picks, from the Titans, as well as from the Giants, from the Browns. Of course, Denver Broncos pulled up because they up the street around the corner. But the Buffs put on this big, and it was on NFL Network. So on Friday, you saw everybody tuning in, watching players run their 40s, like Shiloh, Jimmy Horn Jr. You got to see Shedeur throw to Travis Hunter. So some cool stuff. But this event sparked a massive debate between NFL players about Shedeur Sanders that we've got to dive into, as well as we'll talk about some of the nuggets that came out of it and how this will kind of look for the Buffs. So let's dive into that here on the Prime Time for College Football. Thank y'all for pulling up. Hit that like and subscribe button if you are new to the channel, if you want to check out all the content we've got going on here. But biggest thing that came out of this is, of course, this is the Ain't Hard to Find Showcase. So Coach Prime and them talked to the media. You got to see some 40s ran. Jimmy Horn Jr. Ran his, and he got a 4.340 is what he's calculated at. Was roughly between 4.35, 4.38 by multiple NFL scouts that were in attendance. Shiloh ran a 4.45 instead of, and I think it was reported 4.52, but some of the scouts had around 4.4, 4.45, 4.44 and 4.45 for Shiloh, which is huge for his draft stock. That's going to help him immensely when it comes to the NFL draft going down the line. And then, of course, you got to see some players get their workouts in. You got to see some bench press. You name it, at this event, you saw it. And like I said, it was all televised on NFL Network, which shows you the mass appeal and the draw and the pull that Coach Prime has, that he's got all of this stuff. All NFL is eyeballing this. Now, granted, he's also got two players that should go in the top 5 in the draft, in Shiloh Shedeur, as well as Travis Hunter. But, that's not the point. The big thing here is that Shedeur was putting on a nice clinic. And it's funny because I was looking at some of the reports. There was one scout that talked about what they saw out of Shedeur, and I thought this was an interesting take. So Jordan Schultz, one that we follow here on the channel, he put out a nice little report. Let me pop this up on the screen for you all. And this is what he got regarding Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders. I asked the top-level executive who was at the Buffalo's Pro Day to describe what he saw. I just think he throws a really catchable ball. Accuracy is one thing, but catchability is another. Shedeur's got both. And watching him live today, there was more power, more velocity than expected. He's definitely a pocket guy, but athletic enough to buy time and make plays. His offensive line was always an issue in college, but turnovers never were. Which is one thing that a lot of people have said about when it came to Shedeur, is that even though the offensive line struggled at times and there was a lot of things that need to be worked out, he didn't turn the ball over. No double-digit turnover seasons at Colorado. He made sure to keep hold of the ball on his touchdown. He didn't throw a lot of interceptions. And that was what's critical about a quarterback going into the NFL. If you've got a bad line, are you turning the ball over? What does that look like? And he's one of the more accurate quarterbacks out there. And so that was huge for them. And so you got to see him work out. He did a few throws. Him and Travis Hunter connected. So you got to see Travis also work out, which was pretty big. A lot of people did not expect Travis Hunter to actually go out there and do it, because he didn't do anything at the combine. Granted, he doesn't have to. He's considered the best wide receiver and the best cornerback prospect in the draft. So regardless, he's going in the top 5. So there's no real reason to even, be concerned with that. Well, the bigger conversation came down the line was around Shedeur and his throws. And so this is where it started. I'm going to start at the beginning. We're going to chronicle this because it was two NFL dudes going back and forth at each other. A couple of other NFL guys made some comments, but let's start off. It's Darius Slayton, wide receiver, who was with the Giants. And this is where it kind of began. First conversation piece was Someone said a lot of double taps and hitches from Shedeur today. NFL defenders close windows quickly. This was a concerning workout for John Frescella or whatever. Well, Darius replied to him. He's like, I promise he could pat the ball and be just fine. If DBs was so good at breaking on balls, patted, they'd all have 8+ picks a year. Same guys that fall for a 2-man dagger concept and give up the dig on 3rd and long every season, all season long, talking about a ball pat. What a joke. Look, I didn't really want to get into this debate, but it seems like everybody has an issue that Shedeur pats the ball. That is literally the big conversation piece. And I thought it was funny because Darius was going back and forth with some folks. Because somebody else mentioned, Andre Cisco pointed this out. He said, boy, better stop patting that ball. We breaking on that early. That is what he said. Cisco from Jacksonville. And, you know, Nick asked this to Slay. And so Darius Slayton replied back, there's these large fellows called offensive linemen who in the between line of sight. So if a quarterback getting 6'4", 6'5", you lose them behind the line all the time. So if I can't see the QB throw it to me, how in the Flying Dutchman is a DB going to see him pat it before he throws it? Look, the television product is a completely different animal from what you see actually on the field in the line, what the line of sight looks like and everything. They are wearing helmets too, so it's kind of hard visually to see things. I think Darius Slayton has a point. So then he gets into a nice back and forth with Micah Parsons, who felt the need to chime in and say, you realize at pat on the back on the ball can be a difference between a sack or a throw. And Slayton replies back, of course. Tom Brady, literally the king of getting the ball out fast, patting the ball when he throws. So actually no, patting the ball is not that big of a difference. And asking Slayton's thoughts, I would love to hear from you all in regards to that, because I thought it was interesting that he was pointing all of that out, mainly because that was a major point of contention in all these conversations. People felt that is going to be a problem for him when he gets to the NFL. But me personally, I don't believe it is. And I say that not to, I say that mainly because in my personal opinion, the field view is much different than it is the in-game view. And what's funny behind all of this is Micah, of course, replies back, of course, of all people that you're talking about the greatest quarterback ever, right? Talking about Tom Brady. Not realizing, and I don't think he realized, that Tom Brady is legitimately Shedeur Sanders' mentor. And if Brady felt like that was going to be a problem, don't you think that Tom Brady would have tried to correct it or work with him on, hey, you probably need to adjust this, do this, change that? Or am I crazy? Because I feel like if Tom felt like it was going to be a problem, I feel like that would have been changed. That would have been something that had been adjusted. That had been a conversation that they would have had, and would have worked through fixing a lot of that. But it appears that for a lot of other players, some people really do believe that that's going to be a problem for Shedeur going into the NFL, that patting the ball is going to be something that people are going to just completely intercept with no problem. I mean, here you see him throwing it, patted it, and go, boom, good. I don't believe it's going to be an issue because you don't see this as much when you're on the field. It's a lot harder to see it on the field in comparison, because that's not what you're watching for. As a defender, you're probably paying more attention to the wide receiver than the corner. Now, in some situations, some corners are that good, or safeties, they can jump up. But do you really believe that people working with Shedeur aren't going to work with him on making sure that his pats are more subtle? Heck, there was people posting videos inside of social media showing Dak Prescott doing it, right? Micah Parsons, quarterback, he's patting it. You don't have a whole bunch of interceptions. You show, and heck, Darius Slayton even show videos like Tom Brady in practice, Kyler Murray, a few other quarterbacks doing that, because it's not something that's not unheard of. It's something that's common. So definitely want to hear from y'all. Get in the comments. I want to hear y'all thoughts on that. Definitely a good session. Prime and them had a big guest this weekend. And of course, the players lost their minds and got some great advice from one of the greatest corners playing the game. that's not named Deion Sanders. We'll talk about that in another video. Make sure you subscribe as well as hit the bell notification so you don't miss it. And yeah, we'll keep y'all up to date on this draft and what's going on. So we'll talk soon. Let's go Buffs.